First of all, thank you so much for taking some time today to hang out and listen to some of my nonsense. I'm a big Zendesk Sell fan. When I was first talking to Josh about this and took a look at it, I was completely unfamiliar with Sell, and I wish I would have known about it years ago. I work with a number of early stage tech companies, and it's so clean. I love it. So with that in mind, I wanted to give a little background, and then we're going to talk about what I believe is a non-obvious evolution that's happening in the world of selling that there aren't a whole lot of people talking about. And so what we're going to do is we're going to get a little nerdy here at the beginning, and I want to take you through some brain science and some research. And then we're going to get into tactics on how to apply those. And so to take a step back by way of background, I'm a multi-time head of sales. I carried a bag for a number of years too. I would consider myself a solid B minus sales rep, but I always knew that sales leadership is where I wanted to go. As I moved into those roles, I worked for a couple of companies. We were able to exit. We also, at one point, I was with Exact Target, who is a one-to-one marketing company based in Indianapolis, took them through on their sales leadership team, their IPO, and then their eventual exit to Salesforce for a little over 3. But it all changed when I was at, you know what? Hold on a quick second here. Josh, are you able to hear me all right still?
Yeah, I think you're kind of popping between two microphones.
Yeah, it looks like my mic is not wanting to establish a solid connection. So
you sound great.
Oh, now I do. Okay, I just did the old unplug and replug. So there we go. So anyway, my last role, I was the chief revenue officer of a company in Chicago called Power Reviews. And if you don't know who they are, they help retailers and brands collect and display ratings and reviews on their websites. So if you're on Crocs.com or Vineyard Vines or Jet, and you're looking at a product, and then you look below it or look to the right and you see the reviews, Power Reviews was helping those organizations collect and display those. We did a research study with Northwestern University that literally changed my life. And I know that sounds insane, but that's actually what happened. And essentially, the research study looked at consumer behavior. So when a consumer comes to a website to buy something and there's no salesperson, so the website is acting as the seller, how do consumers act? Like, what do they do? What do they look for? And here's the thing that changed everything. So first of all, for everybody who's listening to this, you all look at reviews before you buy anything of medium to high consideration that you've never purchased before. The data showed that 96% of us do that. And I've yet to meet anybody in the 4% that doesn't look at reviews. That sounds crazy to me. But so that's no surprise. Here's the big surprise on it. Number one, that 82% of you look for the negative reviews first. So you scan right past all the 5s and go right down to the 1s to the 4s, right? You're trying to predict what your experience is going to be like. But the other piece of this is that when a product on a website has a review score between a 4.2 and a 4.5, those products sell at a higher rate than ones that have a perfect 5. Like, that's the ideal purchase probability. So again, this is when consumers are going to a website and looking, and the website is acting as the salesperson. So I looked at this study and I was thinking about it, thinking about consumer behavior and thinking to myself, all right, does this apply to human selling, first of all? And second of all, why? Like, why do we seek out the negatives first? And why does this 4.2 to 4.5 sell better than a perfect 5? And I dove into the brain science. I went ear deep into the library trying to figure this out. And first of all, for everybody who's listening, as it turns out, neuroscientists have pinpointed how we make decisions as human beings. Wouldn't that be really valuable to know as salespeople? Well, I'm no neuroscientist, so I actually found a neuroscientist in Chicago to help vet this stuff for me. But essentially, found 3 core things that I want to talk to you about today. And if we had hours, I could go even nerdier on a bunch of other stuff. But the 3 things that I want you to walk away from the brain science part here at the beginning. Number 1, is that we are all wired to resist being influenced, meaning unduly influenced, unduly sold, oversold. So, the analogy I always make is, recently looking out my front window at home and seeing two people walk up the driveway, both well-dressed, and one was holding a clipboard. It was like, close the drapes, get the kids in the basement, pretend like we're not home, right? Like it's almost a subconscious thing that we try to resist the circumstances where we're going to be sold to. I mean, I remember dreading the last time I had to go walk in and buy a car. So with that in mind, when we know we're going to be sold to, we set up barriers subconsciously. Number two, and this is a really important one too, is that we all, in the decisions that we make, all of our decisions are made with feeling and emotion in that part of the brain, and are backed up or justified using logic. Again, we are feeling machines that think, not thinking machines that feel. All of our decisions resonate in the limbic, which is in the middle of the brain, which governs feeling and emotion. And if we do not experience feeling and emotion, meaning if we don't have a feeling and emotion, we can't make decisions. So when you think about all the decisions that you make on a day-to-day basis, they're actually coming from there. When you hear logic, we need to flip it and understand what the feelings are. The third piece of this is essential, and it's really a combination of those two, is that transparency sells better than perfection. Doesn't matter if it's a website or in a human-to-human interaction. Leading with our flaws and disarming that resistance to being sold to sells better than pretending to be flawless and selling perfection. The reason that buyers, 82% of us, look for the negatives first is that's how we're wired. So when you're in a selling situation, your buyer is desiring subconsciously the negatives first. They want to know what the risk is before they invest the time to learn the benefits. And so as it turns out, when we lead with that, we are actually disarming the brain's limbic filter and accelerating our path to decision-making with buyers. So, okay, I get it, Todd, that imperfection sells better than perfection, and we should be authentic, and we should be honest, and we should be transparent. That's probably not news to anybody, but here's the thing that makes this urgent. And when I talk about the fact that that the future of sales is radically transparent, it's not just the brain science. It turns out that there's a massive proliferation going on of reviews on everything we do, everything we buy, and everything we experience. So I'm like I said, 96% of you are looking for reviews before you buy anything of substance. But we think about that with the products that we buy, the restaurants or hotels that we choose. We're rating our Uber drivers that are also rating us. And that is making its way aggressively into the B2B world too. So for example, if you're in tech sales, you're probably familiar with sites like G2.com or Trust Radius that are collecting and displaying ratings and reviews on B2B tech. And really across every industry and vertical, we're starting to see sites like that where buyers can go do their homework beyond the claims of you, the seller or the marketer. So, all right, so how do we apply this and what's an example? Well, let's start with everybody's favorite retailer in the world, IKEA. So I'm assuming that you've all been to an IKEA before, or if not, you're probably familiar with it. But like every time I go to an IKEA, I look around and I think, gosh, if I was a furniture retailer, wouldn't it be really easy to beat these guys? I mean, the experience is awful, right? You walk in, it's a labyrinth of like curvy walkways that have arrows. You finally find what you're looking for. Let's say it's bedroom furniture, and find the bedroom furniture, like the actual frame and headboard and everything that you want. You look around, there's no salesperson. So you've got to write down the code or take a picture of it, because you're going to need that code when you go down to the warehouse yourself, pick it, pack it, put it onto a cart that somehow miraculously, massive oversight, doesn't have brakes. You roll it awkwardly through the cashier station, get it to the parking lot, The parking lot is a joke. Like, you just watch people trying to jam these big boxes into the back of their hatchbacks. They're F-bombing their way through it. They then drive home. They've got an injury or two as a souvenir, and they open the box, and then the fun begins, right? It's like, if that experience wasn't bad enough, now I've got to put this thing together. 150 parts that have no words on them anywhere. And it looks like the work instructions were written by a child. So why do I bring this story up? Well, turns out IKEA is the largest #1 furniture retailer in the world for 8 straight years, right? The experience is terrible, yet they crush it, everybody. And what I want you to think about here is, every one of your businesses gives up something to be great at its core. IKEA doesn't hide anything in terms of what the experience is going to be like. What they tell the world is, listen, we're not going to be good at that experience. You're going to find it, you're going to pick it, you're going to pack it, you're going to assemble it yourself. But the reason we do that is because we want to be the best in the world at giving you modern Scandinavian design furniture that you didn't pay a lot for, right? I mean, you put together the bedroom furniture, and as soon as you get it assembled, you're like, oh man, we could really use some end tables for this bed frame. Let's go back, right? It doesn't make sense, but that's what happens. Companies like IKEA and Southwest Airlines and Progressive Insurance and the B2C space, they've really mastered this whole messaging around, hey, this is what you give up so that we can be great at this, right? If somebody goes to IKEA and says, I need a salesperson and white glove service and this whole great assembly experience, IKEA is going to say, hey, go to Macy's, go to Room and Board, go to Crate and Barrel. That's not us. Think about that in your own organizations. So how does this apply to the B2B space? Well, after I had done all this research and really started digging into it, what I found, I was in New York one day, and I had an afternoon a meeting that had just canceled. My flight wasn't going to be until later. I was the CRO of Power Reviews. My VP of Sales sends me a text and says, Todd, great news. Calvin Klein just came in as an inbound lead. And so we went back and forth. He explained that the sales process was appearing to look like they were going to have an initial call, and then they wanted to send out an RFP. And then from that, they were going to have the finalists come in and do, the dog and pony presentations in New York. And I said, wait, in New York? I'm in New York right now, and I have the afternoon open. I know it's a long shot, but could you have the rep send a note to Calvin Klein's head of e-commerce and just tell them, hey, I'm in town right now. If he's got a time available, I would love to just go grab coffee with them and set the stage. It's so convenient. Well, they do that, and the guy actually said yes, which, I thought was like a 1 in 20 shot. So I headed over to their offices in Manhattan. And for anybody that's ever been to Calvin Klein's offices in Manhattan, it's kind of creepy. So I'll warn you, this next slide could be a bit jarring. But it's the elevator bank when you walk in. So you walk into the first floor, check in. You then go up to the 5th floor. And this is what the elevator bank looks like, which is a little bit disconcerting when you get there. In the middle, you'll see a door. That's where the head of e-commerce met me. We went back to his office, which in Manhattan is a really tiny office. I keep thinking that we're having coffee, but the first thing he says to me is, hey, here's my monitor. If you've got your presentation, you can just plug in here. And I was like, my presentation? I look to my right, and all of a sudden, people are rolling chairs in. The next thing you know, there is 7 more chairs in the room. So there's 9 of us packed into this hot Manhattan office that was really, really tiny. This head of e-commerce was New York in the best way possible, right? He was like right to the point, no small talk. He just said, Todd, listen, we're talking to your competitors. We really like what they have to offer. We did a web search. We found you. It looks like you're a viable alternative. So let's just cut to the chase. How are you better than them? And so what do? Well, for me, I had just digested all of this research and the decision science. And I was like, what the heck? I'm going to try it. I got nothing to lose here, especially since I'm not prepared to do a formal presentation for 8 people. So I said, listen, would it be helpful if I started with how they're better than us? Because they just released a new add-on to the core offering. And it's not on our radar. It's not something that we've contemplated. It's not in our plans. And one of their first customers is in the apparel space. So if that's going to be important, I would like to get that on the table right now. And if it is, and it's going to be the most important thing, I'm going to save everybody an awful lot of time. Well, you can immediately feel the whole room deflate a little bit, like, all right, this should be interesting. I'm not sure I trust this guy yet, but it's a lot better than him spraying me with a sales pitch. So I then went on to explain it. And I did talk about the customer that they had that was on it. They all looked at each other and said, you know what, not something that we had contemplated. It's interesting, but it's definitely not on our roadmap for the next few years either. As a matter of fact, I don't know why we would go to a ratings and reviews provider for that anyway. It was like, all right. And then I went into basically like IKEA, right? That first part was talking about the experience with picking, packing, and putting it together yourself. I then went into the modern Scandinavian design furniture pitch, right? Which was, hey, we're not going to do that because we want to focus on our core and be best in class in that. Talked about that for a couple of minutes. I could see that this head of e-commerce kind of looking around a little bit. And all of a sudden, we're only 15 minutes into this meeting. He kicks the other 7 people out and did something I've never had anybody do before. He grabs a folder from his credenza and it opens it up and it says e-commerce budget. We scroll about a third of the way down. It says ratings and reviews technology and had a dollar amount. And he said, can you hit that? Literally, this is 15 minutes into the relationship. In what I learned very quickly thereafter is that 15 minutes turned out to be the whole sales cycle. We had a conversation about the dollar amount that was in there. 2 weeks later, he called me and said, Todd, and I saw on my caller ID, it was Calvin Klein, so I picked up. He said, Todd, we made a decision. I wanted to call you first because something funny happened. I called your competitors and told them we were going with you. They immediately went into a long dissertation sales pitch about that add-on technology that they just released and how the other apparel company had just invested in it. And he stopped them and said, whoa, 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 whoa. Even Power Reviews' CRO has been trying to sell us on this. We're not interested. So the point there is that when we lead with our flaws and lead with the things that our competitors are going to sell against us anyway, we do so many things here. Number one, we accelerate sales cycles dramatically, right? We also increase win rates, immediately. We qualify deals in faster. So I was able to qualify this deal in instantly by presenting something that I knew our competitors were going to present against us. And if it was going to be important, then I knew we were probably going to lose, but it turned out not to be. So qualified in, we qualify deals out faster that we were probably going to lose anyway. And we make it really hard on our competitors to compete against us. So when we think about like, how do we do this? Well, it starts with a word that was coined by the supermodel Tyra Banks. And so I want you to think about this word when you think about your positioning. But Tyra Banks coined the term flawsome, which is essentially we should be all embracing our flaws, but know that we are awesome regardless. And what does that mean? Well, the reason I want to reinforce this is that I'm not telling any of you to go into your next sales engagement and talk to the customer and say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, this is why we suck. Like, that's not what we're doing. The 4.2 to 4.5 is really, really important. And if your solutions are worse than that, you probably have got troubles beyond your selling anyway. But it's time to go understand what makes you a 4.2 to 4.5 and embrace that and lead with it. Because the brain science tells us that it makes magical impacts on the way that human beings make decisions. And the proliferation of reviews makes it urgent anyway. You can no longer hide your flaws and expect to get away with it. So your homework is essentially to think about this. Gartner was called the Corporate Executive Board back in 2017. They had done a study that looked at buyers and what buyers spend their time on with regards to a purchase. What they found is that only 39% of their time is spent either talking to you, talking to your competitors, or having internal meetings with their internal buying group. So that's the 22 and the 17% here. So that's only 39% of their time spent in evaluation. So what's the other 61%? Well, it's doing other stuff that they're not getting from you. They're back channeling references. They're looking at analyst reports. They're calling their buddies that might have had experience in your product category. Again, they're looking at G2 Crowd and Trust Radius if you're in the tech space or whatever industry you're in. Find out where people go. And then I put Glassdoor on here because Glassdoor is now a place where buyers are going every single day. What I mean by that is, for example, if you go to Google right now and say, what is it like to work with Zendesk? You know what the first thing that comes up is? Glassdoor, with a rating snippet and a highlight of what the current and former employees have had to say about what it's like to work in that organization. Buyers are trying to predict their experience with your products, your solutions. Part of it is understanding your people, understanding your culture. They're working with you beyond the products and services. They want to know what they're getting themselves into. That's why we look for the negatives first. We're trying to predict our experience. And that 61% is buyers going out and doing the research. So your homework is to empathize like a buyer. Go out into the world and figure out what a buyer is going to find when they're doing their 61% of other stuff in your evaluations. Work with your marketing departments to make sure that you've got your messaging down. That's 4.2 to 4.5, right? And start to lead with your flaws. Because when you do, that 61% number goes down dramatically. That sales cycle with Calvin Klein would have normally been 6 months. It was 2 weeks to decision, 4 weeks of T's and C's. We got the deal done in 6 weeks. And it's because of the 61%. When we led with the stuff that they were not getting from us, they would typically have not gotten from us, but they did. And then they went and did a little research and found it matched up. They didn't need to do the 61%. It dropped down to probably 10% of that sales process. That's what happens when you do the homework for your buyers and lead with it. All right. So that's my nerdy stuff, talking about the brain science of decision-making, being flawsome, leading with your flaws, understanding that buyers' brains crave that, and hitting that 4.2 to a 4.5 in the way that you position your solutions. So let's move on and let's go into a little brain science as it applies to your emails and email prospecting. So different subject here, right? Which when we're talking about email prospecting, but I want you to empathize for a minute with the people that you are prospecting into. So imagine in your roles today, as you move up in your career, so from sales rep to manager to director to VP to CRO or whatever roles you go through in your career, as you move up in your career, you get more emails. All right, it's just a fact of life. As a CRO, I was getting 100 to 150 emails every single day. And I had 30 to 35 meetings that I was in per week. So you can imagine email to me was like the instant lottery. I had to check it. Every executive, everybody in every business has got an obligation to check their emails because there could be a winner in there, right? Just like the instant lottery. You got to check it, but it's more than likely filled with losers. But you've got to check it to see if, hey, is there a message from a customer or prospect, my boss, an investor, the board, a peer, there's something of real value in there. So we are constantly in a state of scanning our email inbox and trying to predict whether an email is in there to help us or to sell us. And so here's a quick snippet from my inbox when I was at Power Reviews. And this is only 8 in the book, The Transparency Sale. I've got a whole page of these if you really want to have some fun with it. I've blocked out the last names to protect the guilty here, but a couple of things I want you to see here. When imagine you're an executive and you've got an inbox of 100 emails and you see 8 in a row that looks like this. So they're all white noise to you, right? The first thing I want you to concentrate on is the subject line. Do the subject line matter to anybody? Because it doesn't anymore. Subject lines don't matter the way that they used to. What matters is this preview. There's 10 words here that are the determination to me as to whether or not this email is here to help me or to sell me. Every inbox that I have probably you too, has a little preview. So this is Gmail, but my Outlook does, my iPhone does. You can guess that the people that you're prospecting into have that same issue as well. So what jumps out at you right away? Well, you see things like, I wanted to, I wanted to, I wanted to, I wanted to. It's a consistent phrase that comes up. White noise. Again, imagine how many emails me as an executive has, and I see this. Those get erased right away. They have to, right? I may love you. You might be wanting to give me $1 million, but I would never see it, given that you've got that volume of emails, that volume of meetings, and the purpose of email for an executive. What you wanted to becomes irrelevant. And I don't think that's me being a jerk. I think that's me being a realist and prioritizing my time. So the I wanted tos have got to go. There's another layer, which is I'm going to keep peppering you with messages until you open my emails. So the just checkings, or I just wondered, or the next category, which is the guilt trips. I've reached out a couple of times. I've tried to reach you a few times. Thanks for the reminder as to why I didn't open the emails the last time. So my advice to you around email prospecting to start with is to empathize with the person that you're emailing. Understand that they might have 100 emails in their inbox. And for you to stand out, think about what it must be like to them. The change here is in those first 10 words, you need to make it evident that the email is personalized and valuable, right? Those two words, personalized and valuable. If it's not personalized, it's probably not going to get open. And if it appears to be no value to me as the recipient, it's not going to get open, right? So personalized and valuable, what does that look like? Well, there is no silver bullet on this. I wish there was, otherwise email prospecting would be so much easier and I'd probably be rich from knowing. But you've got to really empathize with the people that you're selling to. I mean, for me as a CRO, a couple of them that I received that were really valuable were, we had posted some SDR, sales development roles on our website. We were headquartered in Chicago. I suddenly get an email from a company that says, I think the subject line was SDR Chicago salary study. And then the email started with, hey, you're hiring SDRs. Here's a study of how much they make in the Chicago market. I was like, wow, this is personalized and valuable. Like, this jumps out. If this email was in the middle of here, you'd all see it and you'd all be able to see that it jumps out. I opened it and it was amazing, right? It was exactly what they said it was. So that's got to match. A couple of weeks later, the quarter end, I get an email saying, board, I think it was like a CRO board template. And then it started out with, hey, Todd, your quarter just ended. Here's a template that might save you some time prepping for your next board meeting. I was like, this is awesome. Who are these people? But that's the point, right? They were adding value to me in my email inbox and establishing a relationship. Here's a quote I want you to think about. Every interaction that you have with a potential buyer, you are either building trust or eroding trust. Trust is not staying the same. Every touch point, whether it be a call, a voicemail, one of your emails like this, a human-to-human conversation or face-to-face contact, they see a marketing ad, you are either building or eroding trust with every interaction. Use email as an opportunity to build it and not erode it, okay? So let's say there's an email that I saw that I loved that I wanted to open up. Here's the next thing I want you to think about. So we optimize our the first 10 words of your emails, get rid of the I's and we's, make it personalized and valuable. Somebody opens it up. As it turns out, our brains crave simplicity. All right. Have you ever, like, imagine you get an email, like an unsolicited email, and you open it up. So there was an inbox that attracted you to think, hey, this is valuable, so I'm going to open this thing up. You do, and it reads like War and Peace. Like, I scroll down and it's like 10 paragraphs. Your brain on the inside starts to cry. It's like, God, you know what? You've just given me a lot of work. So what I want to implore on you is to think about your emails and what their purpose in life is: to build trust, to add value in a personalized way, and they must be short. If you've got a War and Peace message you want to deliver, email is not the way to do it, and you're making more work for your buyers. Think Twitter length instead of War and Peace length. And this is an example from the e-commerce space, and they're actually using brain science in the way that they present information about their products. So this is Zappos. What Zappos does, on the left, you see item information, and I blew it up for you on the right. But you'll see that they show 3 bullets, and then they fade the 4th one. And it says, show more information. You know why they do that? It's because of that Homer Simpson picture I just showed you, that our brains crave simplicity. If I list out, if an e-commerce site like this has 20 bullets, your brain is going to cringe a little bit. If they only show 3 and invite you to more information, it makes it more attractive to the brain, to the eye. And if I click on show more information, now Zappos knows that I'm engaged and interested. Could you do that with your emails? Absolutely you can, right? Most of us have email tracking technology where we can see when people click on a link. But essentially what you can do is keep your emails really short and then provide a link to more information. Or if you've got more information that's beyond Twitter length, put it below your signature block. There's a natural break there that the brain is ready for and used to. Or there's technologies that do basically account-based marketing or account-based sales signature blocks. There's a company in Indianapolis called Sigstr, Sigstr, that might be worth checking out, that does that, where based on who you're sending an email to, it'll create a banner ad at the signature based on the individual that you're sending it to. So you could have basically personalized signature blocks. So anyway, the point there is keep your email short and make it easy for them to investigate on their own. And then once they do, if you've got the mechanisms to, those are the companies that are probably a little hotter leads than the ones that are not opening your emails at all, right? Okay, cool. So that's email. I've now created an email that it makes me want to open it. It's now short enough where I'm interested. Maybe I've engaged. What's the next thing that happens? Well, we ask for the appointment, right? And so I want you to think about the way that you ask for the appointments. And this is such a non-obvious thing to think about, but so often reps, when they're trying to ask me for an appointment, they're thinking that they are doing me a favor by making all of their times available on their calendar. And what I mean by that is essentially think about if you were in a town that you've never been in and you're with a buddy, your partner, your wife, your husband, whatever, and you're hungry. You're walking down the street and you see a restaurant on the left and a restaurant on the right that you're going to decide between. The restaurant on the left looks kind of empty, right? Like you don't see anybody in the windows, you don't see anybody out in front. But the one on the right, and there's some energy around that. You see some people in the stairs walking in, you can see some people in the window. Which one do you go to? Well, our brain's subconscious attracts us to the one that's in demand, right? We are attracted. One of the feelings, when I talked about we make feeling decisions and use logic to back it up, one of the feelings is relatedness, which means fitting in, doing what the cool kids are doing. And so when you ask for an appointment and say, hey, how about next week? Just pick a time. I'll make it work. I will be totally flexible for you. You're actually creating the impression that you're the restaurant on the left. And one step further than that is these calendaring apps, which I love the calendaring apps. Don't get me wrong. Like I use them myself. You're making the process of scheduling with a customer easier. That you're trying to reduce friction on the path to scheduling an appointment, which is why I love calendaring apps. But if your calendaring app looks like this, you are the restaurant on the left. You are creating the impression that nobody likes you. What I mean by that is you can see here, and I wish I could have shown the whole time block, but in this person's calendar that I clicked on, every single time, every single day, from 9 until 5, except for lunch, of course, they had to take lunch off. So for 12 to 1, it was blocked off. They had open. That would be like me needing to get heart surgery, calling the doctor and the doctor saying, hey, when do you want to come in? I got nothing going on. Like, wouldn't that make you think that the doctor must suck? Well, that's basically what you're doing by creating the ultimate inflexibility in the way that you schedule. So be specific in the times that you provide to your customers. It does 2 things. It allows you to control your calendar, but it also creates the impression, that subconscious impression, that you're in demand. How do you do that? Well, if you're doing it verbally or in email, give them a couple of times to choose from instead of a million, right? Which means, hey, I've got time available Tuesday at 10 o'clock or Wednesday at 1. Either of those times work for you? Or in your calendaring apps, just make the time available where you're at your best, right? And that's another benefit to doing this. Like, I know for me, I'm at my best in certain times of the day, and certain times of the day I start to drag. And I know what those times are. And if I don't have my coffee by about 3 Central Time in the afternoon, I start to drag. I don't want to be doing my most important things there. So when I'm scheduling important meetings, I'm trying to be specific around the core times where I'm at my best. You can do that too. The benefits are amazing, not only in optimizing for your time, but drawing people in, like that restaurant on the right that has energy and activity. Be the cool kids, okay? All right, the last thing I want to leave you with before we wrap up here is my favorite topic of all time, and it's negotiation. When we think about the brain science of negotiations, 2 things I want you to think about. Number 1 is, as a sales professional, have you felt this before? I know I always did, not only as a rep or a leader, as a leader, that I needed a completely different set of skills to be a negotiator versus being a seller. And what I mean by that is that sales, we're trying to build trust through the whole process, right? From the first interaction to the point they say yes. We are being helpful. We're aiding the buyer on their buying journey. We're being their buying Sherpa, essentially, right? Taking them through the course and helping them make a great decision. And then they say, yes, Todd, we're going to go with you. And what do? We get into Texas Hold'em style, where we change our personalities and start lying to them, right? We hide our tells. We don't tell them what a good deal is for us. They don't tell us what a good deal is for them. And we do this back and forth game. That's always driven me crazy. And it also drove me crazy that all the learnings that I had in negotiation essentially came from former hostage negotiators from the FBI or the CIA. Like, those are awesome. It's so cool to learn the psychology of it, but we're not selling the release of hostages, right? We are selling technology, products, services. It's simple. So what transparent negotiations is a way to build trust right through the goal line. And it's so easy. It'll give you a framework for which to get something of value for every dollar you give away in the form of a discount. And what that means is, I bet you any one of the companies that are on the phone right now, there's 4 things that you care about as an organization and for your comp plan, as it turns out. The first one's volume, so how much you sell. The second one is the timing of cash, so how fast they pay. The third one is the length of commitment, so how long they commit. And the fourth is when they sign. So when a customer says, hey, I need 30% off, you could go into the Texas Hold'em style and say, well, I can give you 15% off if you sign by Tuesday. And you go into this ping pong battle where you're using one lever at a time. Or you can say, hey, listen, I think we might have a way to get you there. You can commit to more technology. You can pay us faster. You can commit to longer, or you can help us forecast our business. For each one of those, we will pay you in the form of a discount. When you do that, you are building trust right up to the goal line, and you get yourself out of the business of being a charitable organization where your discounts are essentially charity to the buying company's bottom line and their budget. So think about that. Think about, how do I change the game here, where I provide a framework where my buyers will eventually and essentially be negotiating their own deals. And it's all things that are valuable to our organization. The results, I've rolled this out at a ton of companies. We did it at Exact Target, at Power Reviews. The results were much more valuable deals, trust built right through the goal line, and more predictable deals as well. So I laid a lot on you there. I hope that there was a few things you were able to take out that are going to be immediately applicable. Like, that's the way that I think about it. I'd love for you to get the book if you so choose. It's called The Transparency Sale, available everywhere you buy books, Kindle, and I narrated the audiobook myself. So if you want to continue to hear the sultry sounds of me, go ahead and get that anywhere you buy audiobooks. But Josh, I'll give it back to you here for Q&A or to wrap up.
Thank you so much, Todd. Thank you, Todd. So I'm going to take a look and see if we have any questions kind of coming in. And if while I'm doing that, if you have questions, feel free to add them in. Before we hop into those questions, just a reminder, I do the first question that we get, pretty frequently as we do this on the road is Zendesk Sell, where are you at? And proud to say we're right at a 4.3, which just happens to fall in line with that sweet spot. And then the follow-up question is typically, where does Sell exceed? And the answer to that is, we see people that are looking for very simple sales process that's easy to use by their team. Sell is a great fit for them. And if you want to learn more about Zendesk, check out zendesk.com/sell.